Hello and welcome to the final video of the season. It is the Champions League Fantasy final team selection and we're heading into match day 17. We're going to have all of the essential information heading into the final, and as well as a short list for every single position for players that you may want to consider for the final, whether that's differentials or you're trying to hold rank and you want to try and pick the template squad. If you do enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I am going to be doing Club World Cup Fantasy videos over the summer and some threads over on Twitter, so make sure you follow me on there. And again, like I said, if you are going to be playing Club World Cup Fantasy over the summer, make sure to subscribe for those videos. We will start them probably after the Champions League final, so we've got a little bit of a clean slate there, but this is going to be the final video of the season, so let's jump straight into it. So obviously we do get 5 transfers to use this week, so most of us should be able to field a full 11. Essentially, if you have 6 players still in the competition, you are going to be perfectly fine, because obviously the bench does not matter. There's not going to be any swapping around with players because there is only one day of matches for that one final. So your bench isn't going to matter unless anyone in your starting 11 doesn't play whatsoever, but obviously we are going to be waiting for the lineups to make any of our transfers, so you should be absolutely fine. So the bench is going to be totally obsolete here. You are just focusing on your first 11 players, and you are allowed 11 players from each team as well. So whether you want PSG or Inter Milan, you can get up to 8 players from either of those teams. Now, heading into it, it does look as though PSG are going to be the favourites going into the final. They do have a 33% chance of a clean sheet as opposed to Inter Milan's 24% chance, so both looking quite low. But in terms of over 2.5 goal odds, it is PSG again with the higher one with a 21% chance, and Inter with a 13% chance. So when it comes to Inter attackers scoring over 2.5 goals or more, they're given, a 13% chance. Is a very, very low chance of getting a lot of goals. So PSG defenders, according to the stats, are going to be pretty decent, obviously having the higher chance of a clean sheet as well, and maybe avoiding some of the Inter attackers as well. I don't really think there's as many as opposed to PSG, who do have 6 or 7 good attackers that you can go for. Inter Milan is more so Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram, and not really too many better options there. So if you do like to look more into the stats and the odds and stuff, PSG is definitely the team that you're going to want to load up on. Obviously, with it being the final and only one game in the entire match day, there isn't going to be a lot of goal scorers. All 11 of your players aren't going to be able to pick up attack and returns, so you are going to want to focus on ball recoveries and, of course, the Player of the Match award, which is, of course, going to go to only one player. But the ball recoveries could go to anyone. Obviously, any player on the pitch can pick up a lot of ball recoveries, and you, again, want to focus mainly on PSG players. Mainly, it is going to be your top 4. I think when you get into the Hakimis and a little bit lower than that, it's really not that many ball recoveries. Obviously, we're on match day 17 now, which means there's been 16 match days previous to this, and when you look at the likes of Vitinha with 62 ball recoveries, he's maybe only averaging 3 or 4 per game, which is of course still an extra point, but not to the levels where you're like, I'm going to get in, a De Vrij because he gets ball recoveries. He does have the 7th best, but that is just of PSG and Inter so far. So you're really going to want to be looking at, I guess, maybe your top 5 is really where you could be, looking at a couple of points. Hakimi, Mendes, Neves, Marquinhos and Pacho. So all PSG players, obviously 4 of those being defenders as well. João Neves being the only midfielder at 5.6 million as well. So in terms of ball recoveries, the Inter Milan players aren't looking too great, but if you do want to stick in a couple of them, obviously De Vrij, Bastoni, Çalhanoğlu, a really good one who is also on set pieces, could be a decent one to at least pick up some ball recoveries. Then we've got Pavard as well, but again, like I said, only 41 ball recoveries for Pavard. We are 16 match days in at this point. That's about 2.4 per match, which really isn't going to be that great. Now, obviously, every single person is only going to be able to pick one goalkeeper, so we're going to have basically, a big split when it comes to the goalkeeper. There's not going to be, you don't have a large amount of options. You can pick one goalkeeper, so there is going to be a debate on who's going to be the best one. Obviously, Donnarumma for PSG and Jan Sommer for Inter Milan. Now, as we have already seen, Donnarumma does have the higher clean sheet odds with a 33% chance as opposed to Sommer's 24% chance. However, Sommer is the higher owned player just by 20% as opposed to Donnarumma's 18%, and Sommer has made more saves. He's made 51 saves, which is second out of the entire Champions League so far this season, and Donnarumma, despite making the final and obviously playing a lot more games than other goalkeepers, he is still ranked at 12th for saves. So if you're looking for save points, Sommer is looking like the better option. Sommer does have more points over Donnarumma as well, but when it comes to being a differential, I think it is going to be very, very close. So whether you're trying to hold rank or try and gain points with your goalkeeper and go for a bit of more of a differential option, I don't really think it's going to be the position to do so, because I think it's going to be very evenly split down the middle. Personally, I think Sommer is going to be the better option. I think he will pick up more saves, and I wouldn't be relying on Donnarumma specifically to keep a clean sheet in that match. A decent chance that one of these goalkeepers does pick up player in the match, depending on who obviously wins. So I think if you are going to go for Donnarumma, you are going to be relying on maybe a player of the match award and a couple of saves, but I think Sommer is going to have the higher chance of picking up more saves than Donnarumma, which is going to be probably your main source of points in this final. When it comes to defenders, I believe there's probably about 7 options that you can go for, depending on what formation you do want to be playing. Obviously, you can get up to 5 defenders, and I think these are going to be your best options. You've got basically the entire PSG defence. They all have great attacking threat, and they all have great ball recoveries. Pacho and Marquinhos are your 2 top players for ball recoveries. I think they're going to be the best defenders that you can go for a stable amount of points in the final. Of course, Hakimi and Mendes, if they pick up a goal or an assist, they are going to be great options as well. So the entire PSG back line is a very good option for this final. Obviously, Pacho and Marquinhos are, of course, the more differential picks out of PSG players as well. When it comes to Inter Milan, only Dumfries is more owned than anyone in the PSG defence, and of course, he done really well against Barcelona in both legs. A really good pick to go for, because attacking wise, he definitely is a threat. And then you've got DeMarco on the other side, not as good an option in my opinion. He is the lowest owned out of these 7 so far, but he is prone to a very early sub for someone like Carlos Augusto. So if he's going to get sub before the 60th minute, it's basically locking in a 1-pointer unless he can pick up an attacking return. So for me, DeMarco would probably be at the bottom of this list, and you've also got Bastoni as well, who is just a little bit more owned than DeMarco, and I've got him in there because he is probably the most nailed Inter Milan defender, and the rest, do kind of get rotated a little bit. I think it is going to be Pavard and De Vrij as the other 2, but Serbi could potentially make it in there over De Vrij as well. So obviously we can wait and see lineups, but I think Bastoni is going to be your best option if you do want to go for one of the centre backs. In midfield, there's definitely a much larger pool of options. I've picked out 8 players here that I think could be really good, and again, most of them are going to come from PSG. Most of the PSG attackers do class as midfielders as well, with the only attacker really being Desiree Doué in the forwards list. The rest do come as midfielders, and there is a lot of differentials that you could go for if you are like myself trying to chase some rank. Obviously, Ousmane Dembele 32% owned, a lot lower because he did miss the last game, I believe, so his ownership has dropped a lot, so expect that to go right back up as we go into the final. Other than that, fairly low ownerships all round. Bradley Barcola, who hasn't really been great in the Champions League, is the second highest owned PSG midfielder. We've also got Vitinha in there, who I've owned for quite a while myself. He is on the penalties. If you're trying to hold rank, Vitinha is definitely someone you want to go for. You want to try and go for the set piece takers, in which you've got Vitinha on penalties for PSG and Hakan Çalhanoğlu on penalties for Inter Milan. You really want to go for those 2. It's just the best way to cover off potential goal scorers, and Vitinha's a really nice one for Player of the Match awards as well. He has picked up quite a few throughout this campaign. If you want to go a little bit more differential, you've obviously got Kvaratskhelia as well. He is 7% owned, which is quite low. You've got João Neves. He was obviously third, I believe, for ball recoveries, so a potential decent pick there. Obviously, if he can get an attack and return and some ball recoveries, that would make a really, really nice choice in midfield. Then at only 1% owned, he does have more points than the likes of Barcola and Kvaratskhelia. It is Fabian Ruiz, so he's a really good pick. He isn't obviously the most prolific player in the world, but he can definitely pop up with a goal. We've seen it with Spain throughout the Euros last year and a couple of times in the Champions League with PSG as well. So at only 1% ownership, I think he'd be a massive, massive differential. Someone I'm definitely considering as I am obviously trying to gain some rank. Then for Inter Milan, I don't really think there's too many options. I did leave out Henrik Mkhitaryan here, who is probably going to be starting in midfield, but he has only picked up more than 5 points once in this entire campaign, despite playing, I believe, all of the games. He's only got 1 7-pointer, 1 5-pointer, and the rest have all been blanks. So he's really not been a good option, but again, a huge differential. I believe he's only 1% owned as well, if you do want to really throw out a big differential in there. But Barella and Çalhanoğlu are really going to be your only two choices from Inter Milan. And then up front is where basically everyone is going to have the exact same front three. There is really no other options unless you want to be picking a super sub. Someone like a Taremi, Arnautovic, or a Gonçalo Ramos. They are going to be your only other three options, which I don't think are going to be popular picks. So I think everyone is basically going to be having this same front three of Desiree Doué, Lautaro Martinez, and Marcus Thuram. Again, all dependent on whether Doué is going to be starting. Martinez and Thuram obviously going to be nailed on. Everyone is going to have them. So the only way you're really gaining, if any of those two do well, is if you do stick the captaincy on them. Other than that, it's just going to be a very, very template forward line. So not really much gains to be made at all there. So again, like we've looked at already, your differentials are going to be coming in midfield and defence. Goalkeepers, you're probably not going to be able to gain much. And of course, the forward line, everyone's going to have the same players. So this is personally what I believe is going to be the template heading into the final. This is what I think the most owned players are going to be and what a lot of teams are really going to be looking like. I think the formation is going to be a 4-4-2. I don't think too many players are going to be going for Desiree Doué up front, and obviously the defenders are very much capable of points. Dumfries, Hakimi, Mendes, DeMarco, all really attacking fullbacks, and of course ball recoveries from the likes of Pacho and Marquinhos as well. So I think it's either going to be a 5-back or a 4-back for the majority of players. Heading into midfield, of course, Dembele's going to be there. I think Vitinha and Çalhanoğlu, both being the penalty takers, are going to be very popular options. And then it's going to be the choice between that fourth midfielder. It's going to be most likely a PSG midfielder. Whether it's going to be Kvaratskhelia or Bradley Barcola is really a bit of a 50-50, but I think those two are going to be your main choices. Of course, Martinez and Thuram are going to be the big players up front, who essentially every single active player is going to have because there's no other options available. I do think the template captain is going to probably be Ousmane Dembele, with PSG being the favourites and him being the main man for PSG in this second half of the year. So I think he's probably going to be the most captain player. A lot of shouts for Lautaro Martinez as well, but he of course isn't going to be the penalty taker. So maybe if you want to go a little bit more differential, someone like a Çalhanoğlu could be quite good. Maybe Vitinha if you want to bank on player of the match and PSG getting a penalty. But I think there's going to be a lot of captaincies on the attacking defenders as well. I reckon Hakimi gets captained quite a bit, Dumfries gets captained quite a bit, so it's really hard to say, but I do think Dembele is going to be the main man for captaincy. And with that being said, this is what my team is going to look like for Matchday 17. Of course, at a rank of 17k, I really want to be trying to improve that before the end of the season. So I'm going to have to take some risks. I'm playing the likes of Fabian Ruiz, who's only 1% owned, and benching the likes of Ousmane Dembele, someone who I think is going to be the biggest captaincy. You know, I think everyone is going to own him, so I've just kind of got to bank on someone, you know, bank against someone who is going to be highly owned. And I think Ousmane Dembele hasn't been in the best of form recently, hasn't really been scoring and assisting as much as he had been a couple of months ago. So my big play in the final is going to be benching him and hoping he doesn't do too well. Playing the likes of Fabian Ruiz, probably captaining a Vitinha or a Çalhanoğlu and hoping that there's going to be a penalty or one of them picks up the Player of the Match awards. I've kind of just got to go differential at this point. And of course, I'm going all out on the PSG defence. I was very much going to go for Jan Sommer in goals, but then I'm splitting, you know, between Inter and PSG defence. So my thinking is, if I just go all out on one of the defences, of which I already have 4 PSG defenders, I've got the best chance of doing well. So I'm really banking on a PSG clean sheet here. Obviously I have the higher clean sheet odds than Inter as well. I really don't think PSG are going to keep a clean sheet, but it's really all I've got at this point to try and gain some rank. So I've got 5 PSG defenders, and like I said, banking on some differentials such as Fabian Ruiz and hoping that I can do well. Of course, there's not really much room to improve or, you know, go for any differentials because everyone is essentially going to have the same team, but that's just the way things are going to be heading into the final. So that is going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching the Champions League videos over the course of the season. We will 100% be back for next year, and of course there will be Club World Cup content coming as well over the next couple of weeks. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all next season.